we sometimes forget that we are more than our economic output, that our days are more than the input to some company's bottom line. We want employee experience to be good and our scores to be high because it fuels performance. And that employee experience, like, that should be good because that's also how we're spending our lives.
From the news team at LinkedIn, I'm Jessi Hempel, and this is Hello Monday. It's our show about the changing nature of work and how that work is changing all of us. So in the television show The Office, it's iconic. I'm sure you've watched it. One of my favorite relationships is the one between Jim and Dwight. Like, for example, the time that Jim, he had left the company already, but when he left, he took a bunch of Dwight's stationery with him. And he would fax Dwight these messages from future Dwight. They'd say things like, at 8 a.m., the coffee will be poisoned. And you know Dwight, hilarity would ensue. It was so much fun to watch, and it drove home why we loved The Office so much. Why the people at The Office loved The Office so much. It wasn't the making paper or the selling paper. It was the people, the way they showed up for each other and with each other, the way they were in community with each other. That's what makes any work environment great. Now, today's episode is about just that. Our guest is Bree Groff. Her book is called Today Was Fun, a book about work. Seriously. Bree is a senior advisor to the consultancy SY Partners. She's worked inside companies like Google and this one, Microsoft, and Pfizer and Calvin Klein on the employee experience, on how to help cultures be their best. Now, Bree will tell you that fun is at the very center of that, and she's got a lot of ways that you can put that fun into practice, no matter who you are. Even if you feel like you are not inherently a fun person, even if you feel like you really don't work at a fun company. There's a lot in this episode for you. Here's Bree Groff.
We get a lot of messages, right, about what work should be. And a lot of times I'll hear things like, well, work is called work for a reason, because it's drudgery and you get paid because otherwise people wouldn't do it.
You are channeling my grandparents when you say that, right?
Right, yes.
Yeah.
Which is, and like generationally, it's really different, our relationships with work. And so there's sort of that on one end of the spectrum, that if you're not enjoying work, well, that's normal. You buckle up, you get your paycheck, and you support your family.
Right.
On the other end of the spectrum, there's do what you love and you'll never work a day in your life.
That feels to me like the Gen X, millennial, upper middle class North American promise.
Right. Like do something you're passionate about and uses all your skills and
study what you love. And definitely by the time you get to the job market, there'll be an absolute front door to whatever that was.
Right. And that doesn't always pan out. And it's just a lot of pressure, too, to think that you're supposed to love your job that much, to almost like make it your identity.
It feels to me like that idea that you are just going to study what you love, and definitely by the time you start working, there will be a front door to that perfect way to use it. It's like a promise made to people who looked and acted like me in the 90s and early aughts in North America, and it hasn't really panned out.
No. And it's like some people find it, and that is great.
Right.
But also, not everyone does, and it's a lot of pressure to feel like I have to be lit from within from my profession, and that I need to, follow your passion and your dreams and all of that. And for those for whom that works, it's great.
Yeah.
I also have seen the damage, though, that sort of mindset has caused, which is within a culture of overwork, it can also lead to, I'm not working, I'm pursuing my passion, and therefore it's okay I'm working 60, 70, 80 hours a week, that I identify as a person with my work more than I do with my hobbies or my family or my community or anything like that.
I'm willing to sacrifice everything to put in the long hours because my work is more than work.
Yes.
It is fill in the blank.
Yes. There's also a sense of we have a purpose in our company,
Yep.
and our work is about impact and impact at scale. And so it's hard to say, sorry, boss, I can't do this right now, when your boss is like, well, what about the people? What about the impact at scale?
And that's a double-edged sword, that like
Mhm.
sense of purpose, right? Because that purpose actually gives us a reason to like avoid burnout and get up and show up every
For
day,
sure.
right?
Yes.
But it's also a great way for a company to manipulate us into giving more of ourselves than maybe we owe,
Yeah.
right?
And I mean, even for like the purpose-filled professions like teaching or nursing, like all of the professions where you're giving of yourself so generously, even those professions are rife with burnout. I sometimes feel like I'm like anti-purpose, which I'm not really. Like, I think it's great to feel like your work is contributing to something. But sort of between those two ends of the spectrum of work is drudgery and work is my religion, I have found there's something in the middle, which is just work is a nice way to spend our days on the planet. Work can be fun. It can be a nice way to hang out with other people that we enjoy.
I love that idea. It takes all the pressure off of work to be anything, frankly,
Yeah,
and puts all the pressure on you to simply figure out a way to have a nice day.
that's it. You should just write that down and make that the book. Yeah.
Well,
Mhm.
why is it so hard?
Why is it hard?
Yeah. At good jobs and at not good jobs, it can be hard to have a good day.
Yeah. It's hard because we sometimes forget that we are more than our economic output, that our days are more than the input to some company's bottom line. And so when we think about employee experience as, well, we want employee experience to be good and our scores to be high because it fuels performance. Well, that's true. We sometimes forget that employee experience, like that should be good because that's also how we're spending our lives, like our days on the planet. And I think when we forget to put our own experience of work first, which
Right.
I recognize is a bold claim in a culture of capitalism where we as human resources are never first, we're the input, we're the fuel. I think when we do put ourselves first and say, what would it take for me to have a great day? Then all the good things follow. So people have good days at work when they like the people that they work with, when they're getting to do creative and brilliant work, when they're helping the customers or clients. Like that feels really good. We sometimes forget work is a really fundamentally good thing that makes us happy for the same reason that my daughter is like excited to get a job when she grows up because she wants to contribute and be thanked and show off her skills. And we sometimes just, I think, lose ourselves in the economic output of what work is for, in addition to, or sometimes forego that it's also just our lives, and those should be good too.
We're living through this this moment of fast evolution of technology. The velocity of change is like never before. And there's a lot about this moment and living through it that can feel very painful. But in its best expression,
Yeah.
I think this moment has the potential to be our collective remembering of exactly what you're talking about. One way or another, as we go through this, we will remember what it is that we actually want to spend our time on and who we want to spend it with.
Yes. I quote Milton Glaser throughout the book. A legendary designer, famously did I Heart New York. My good friend and colleague Sue was his art director for a decade. So he's sort of smattered throughout the book as
He's
a
legend.
case study, right?
Yeah.
And when I first interviewed Sue, I was like, oh, well, maybe I'll just like pick up a story or a line or two. And then I realized he embodies the purest, most joyful form of work that I've come across. So, for example, he didn't work with people he didn't like. Granted, not everybody has that luxury.
I was going to say, I wonder if I can put that into practice.
Yeah. But on the whole, he prioritized enjoying the people he was around.
Right.
His imagination didn't have constraints in the way that we often have constraints of, or imagined constraints of, I have to make my deck look this way, the agenda should look this way, I try and make my work look sort of normal. There's a quote of his that nothing has given him the pleasure that work has, including sex.
Yeah, I saw that in the book. I was sort of curious about that.
Yeah. I was like, Milton, good for you.
Yeah.
But I think what he was saying was there is something so pleasurable about creating something out of nothing. And really that's a lot of what work is. Like any organization is trying to build and grow something that wasn't there before that might help people in a certain way. And it's so like fundamentally rewarding. And I think we forget that amidst the day-to-day, like the back-to-back meetings and did I email this thing? And I hope I can bring people back to that sort of Milton spirit of work is enlivening.
Well, so what you're getting at is the convoluted way in which capitalism has reshaped our idea of productivity, right? Productivity at its root is about creating something from nothing. It's about creation, right? And many would argue that the path to creation is rarely straightforward, involves a lot of free time, a lot of what looks like dilly-dallying.
Yeah.
But in the current work world, in the knowledge work world in which many of us function, we've come to define productivity as clearing out the Slack messages before we go home at night, getting done with the email, making sure that the Zoom calls are back to back to back to back to back.
Right.
And that leaves us very busy, but sometimes robs us of our ability to produce anything.
Yes. I always it makes me laugh to think that if an alien were looking down on companies, they would think that businesses succeed or fail based on their email response time. Because I think that's what everyone's chasing. Like, okay, I got back to you, and I got back to you, and I got back to you. And we sometimes forget that the real value comes from, as you said, our creativity, our ability to imagine a world that doesn't exist and then try and build it. And certainly you need the getting things done bit of it as well.
Right.
But we so frequently ignore what our human brains need in order to create something magical or beautiful or even worth building in the first place.
And as you say that, I'm thinking about how that ability to imagine a world that doesn't exist is exactly the thing that we understand that technology cannot and is not on the way to do, right? That is the thing that makes us, at least within a work context, uniquely human. So instead of backing off that, it would be a strategic advantage for us to move toward it full force.
Yes. Yeah. And specifically, even if AI can imagine a future world, it's still up to us to decide, do we like that world? Like, is that a world that we want to live in? And so, yeah, there's a practice in the book called a do nothing day that I talk about, which is a day, it could be for yourself or for your team, where you commit to producing nothing. So you're going to email no emails, you're going to send, no meeting invites, you're not going to set, and no reports, you're just going to think for the day. And this could be with little prompts or, in a group where you're just having long meandering discussions. But I advocate for it because it's so at odds with how we normally think about productivity, where those days when I've had them with teams, they're so immensely creative. And so our output are brilliant ideas.
Right.
And we don't often think of that as output in the same way as I sent you the 20-page deck.
I loved the Do Nothing Day so much.
Yeah.
It actually made me reflect on an exercise I did a number of years ago, a facilitated exercise with a coach. It's maybe like a do nothing half day. And I found it so difficult. And so the exercise was simple. For until 2:00 that afternoon, we could produce nothing, write nothing, exchange no notes. We could be in conversation, whatever we wanted. And we needed to take a walk, a 4-hour walk all over town.
Wow.
Right? And then at 2:00, we were going to sit down, each on our own, and we were going to write down all of our thoughts on the problem we were trying to solve. After an hour of that 4-hour walk, I was ready to sit down and write down all my thoughts, right?
Yeah.
And after 2 hours, I was like, well, I've definitely forgotten all the thoughts I had an hour ago. And after 3 hours, I was almost panicked. And about 3.5 hours in, I was very peaceful.
Oh.
And the exercise was a huge unlock for all of us, not just for
Amazing.
me, for
Yeah,
all of
yeah.
us. And the reason it was an unlock was the constraint of producing nothing.
Yeah. I love Agatha Christie mysteries.
Mhm.
So one of her detectives, Hercule Poirot, he's famous for saying, he like refers to himself in the third person. He's like, for Poirot, it's enough to sit and think. And so like when the detectives, the cops are running around doing fingerprints and looking for shoe prints in the grass, he knows his value. And it's just so funny to me, like, I work as a consultant with so many knowledge workers, and we forget that thinking is knowledge work. That's actually like the whole job is to have good thoughts, and
Right.
certainly different if you're like, I don't know, shipping packages or something. But give like the example you shared, which is having that big expanse of time. It's so odd and yet productive.
Okay, so I want to tie that to fun. Do you got some basics for us about how to navigate that?
I've got some basics of fun. Yes.
Okay, basics of fun.
It is hard to change a system. And the book, honestly, is not written at the systems level. It's
Yeah.
written at the what do I, as a human going to work on Monday, do level. So some little tips. One, whenever you can be mischievous, be a little mischievous. And this is like micro-mischief. I was leading a team at SY Partners. We have like the desks are set up very nice. The office is very nice. And I had brought in a picnic blanket that day. And I said, what's going to be more fun? If we put the picnic blanket on the floor and we work from there for whomever doesn't have a bad back. So we moved the furniture around a little bit. Facilities came by like 2 hours later and was like, you have to put your
table. Yep, sure.
But the fact that we tried to do a little something different, no moving of a table is going to destroy any business value, right? Like I wasn't gambling with the company's bottom line. It was just a little note of experimentation or mischief or fun that allowed us to feel a little bit more creative.
I think as I listen to that, I think about how work, at least the 20th century industrialized work that then led into knowledge work, asks for routinization as a way to be more productive. Make everything the same, everything the same.
Yeah.
And what I'm hearing you say is maybe just try to be different for the sake of it.
Well, yeah, for the novelty of it. Because one, like in an age of AI that can do a lot of the routine tasks, humans are getting pushed, and I think joyfully so, into the spaces that are more human, creative. All of that is really great. And then secondly, I mean, there's a whole chapter in the book about debunking professionalism and what it does to us to have to feel so buttoned up all day, like literally buttoned up.
Yeah.
But also metaphorically as well. You put on your business mask and you sort of like sit nicely and you like use the right jargon for your industry, or you make your work sort of look like everyone else's work. And it's just terrible. Like it's not good for anything. It's not good for business because you're not bringing the most creative parts of yourself. But more importantly, it's not good for us as humans because then we feel less human. Like the number of times, I've after leaving a client, especially like a financial services client, I leave and then you can almost feel that after you leave, right?
Yeah.
Or you're like, okay, I'm not sucking my stomach in anymore. You're like unzippering whatever you want to unzipper. And then you're like, I am a human again. But I think it's harmful when you have to feel like that day in and day out. It's harmful to inclusion. It's harmful to our sense of humanity and self.
Right. Well, let me just push back on that a little bit.
Sure.
Isn't there something to be said for being able to separate yourself from how you spend your professional time so that you can reclaim aspects of yourself that you may need to give up in exchange for a paycheck?
The severance argument. Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
I'm not going full severance.
My caveat is, if something is working for someone, I would never tell them, no, you're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
The reason I push back on it is because generally I see the pendulum having swung too far towards professionalism.
Yep.
I write a lot in the book. It's like there's a whole chapter called Your Brain Works Whether You're Wearing a Suit or Stretchy Pants. And just like my brain works if my hair is wet or dry, or if I'm wearing like nice shoes or like running shoes.
Mm-hmm.
And so I advocate for debunking that kind of professionalism for all of the people. And I think there's a lot who are yearning to just feel a little bit more human in the workplace, and it doesn't feel safe.
Yeah.
It actually feels jeopardizing to their jobs.
Well, it's an interesting moment to make that argument because it seems to me like 5 years ago, the pandemic swung us into a world where yoga pants were the way to go, and your children were probably walking behind you on the screen, and that pallid look you had on your face was warranted because life felt so heavy and hard.
Yeah.
But we were all able to see more of each other. So in that way that pendulums do, we've now swung perhaps way too far to the other side.
Yeah.
Where everybody's work high heels have come out again. And I know that because we're all in the office with each other again. Yes. The truth is that we have an opportunity to work toward a middle ground that better serves people.
Yeah. And I think if you love a heel, wear a heel. I believe you should dress for 3 things exactly. It should be joy, like just wear what makes you happy, comfort, and function. Doctors wear scrubs because they're sanitary and they're comfortable and they do the job, and it's fine. Like, imagine if we had our surgeons in, like, ties to look more professional. Like, no, I want my surgeon, like,
wearing
in
scrubs.
A sanitary, comfortable outfit. If heels bring someone joy because people like dressing up for work, like, that's great. Like, I would love nothing more than to walk into a boardroom and one person's in like a gown or a tuxedo, and one person's in their stretch joggers, and one person is, I don't know, in their leather jacket.
Right.
To me, that's a much more joyful, inclusive, lively version of work.
Okay, Bree. Let's go back to the rules of fun.
Another one I love is music. There's some days when nothing will fix my mood. I'm just like grumpy and I'm having a bad day, and the only thing that will fix it is some kind of catchy tune. My favorite trick is play music from the year that you turned 18, because there's nothing that's going to brighten your day faster than your like high school jams, and you like remember it, you know, and you're like just starting to drive with your friends, and there's something about that like the day could be terrible, like the business could be failing, your project could be going south, whatever it is, but you just get like, you know, I get a little like YouTube in my ears, and I'm like, and I also love it too because if you can play it so that a few people around you hear it, providing you're not super bothering them, it's also just a way to like create a little bit of humanity and conversation, and maybe even defang ageism a little bit too. Like, this came out when I was 18.
I love the idea of
like, you're like,
defanging ageism. Yeah.
So another micro tip. All of my little micro tips are fundamentally they're trying to do the same thing, which is just to bring a little bit of our humanity into the workplace. Where can be sometimes lost.
A little personality, right?
Yeah.
It feels to me like fun is actually a pathway to deeper connection with people. Fun is how you connect with people more freely. And that sense of belonging then doubles down on itself and allows you to feel like you can have more fun. Yeah.
It's all like a positive feedback loop, right? I talk a lot about camaraderie in the book, that I find it so funny. You know, we hear all these quotes from people at the end of life, like, you know, all that really mattered was friends and family, and you know, the relationships are most important, or those big longitudinal studies on happiness are like, well, it was the relationships all along. But for some reason at work, we forget, like, the relationships are just, they're sort of means to an end to get something done. Like, I need to know and like whatever Bob in communications so that he'll receive my thing and pass it along.
It's very transactional, right?
Right.
Go figure out if he has a pet and where he likes to spend his free time on the weekends.
Yeah.
So that he will move your email along more quickly when you need him to.
Right. Yeah. In a system where we're just trying to get things done, that makes sense. I would get why someone would do that. But I'm advocating for a system where first we have good days. And I think it's actually quite simple. Like we should like the people we spend our days with. So if we're going to spend 5/7 of every week at work, we should like those people. You can't like pick all your coworkers always, but in any team that I'm on, I'm always trying to get to know people just because this is how we're spending our lives.
Yeah.
Like I'm hanging out with you and you're hanging out with me. And like, should we maybe make that fun? And like, I don't know, should we know something about each other?
You are advocating for friendship.
Yeah,
You're
for sure.
advocating strongly for friendship at work.
Yes.
And that is a strong point of view that not everyone holds. I had a really influential boss earlier in my career. He was the editor-in-chief of Fortune magazine. We used to have to take these business trips, and we would get to wherever we were going, and he would be like, let's meet in the lobby in 10. And we get down to the lobby, and he would take us to, I don't know, some restaurant he found online or some hiking spot that was maybe not even a hiking spot. And by the way, I didn't know how to hike, right? And his take was like, look, we need to like each other. What else are we doing here on Earth? Not what better stories are going to come out of this, or aren't we going to do better at our conference this week?
Yeah.
But what else are we doing here on Earth?
That's it. Work is something that we do while we're hanging out with each other on the planet. At the end of my working life, I want to look back and think, I had some really great days, some really good laughs with some really good people. We did creative work. We put it out into the world. It helped people. Like that, I think you've won. If you've had good days with good people, like, I think you did it.
That was Bree Groff. Her new book is called Today Was Fun, a book about work, seriously. Check it out wherever books are sold. And keep in mind these 3 things. First, having a good day at work is really about the people that you spend your time with. And maybe you're a person who loves those people, and maybe you're a person who doesn't. In fact, they may really irk you. It is still worth your time to try to work on relationships with them. Personal relationships that will build trust and, yes, help you have a good time during the time that you spend there. Second, how can you introduce a little mischief into your workday? For Bree, it was this idea of creating a picnic. I love that, but I don't really think that would work for me personally. It's a little bit too weird, but I bet there are things that might work, like introducing music at certain points during the day, or doing a meeting reverse day, where everything we did as a meeting, we do independently and vice versa. Folks, I can tell you that even as I'm saying this to you, my producers are in the back room rolling their eyes and thinking, goodness, I hope she doesn't. Finally, and this is really a takeaway for this conversation, but for everything we talk about at Hello Monday, you don't need to buy into any extreme. You don't need anybody to tell you how work is supposed to feel. You don't need any external forces to design your perfect day. That's on you. You get to be the one to decide how to make meaning of your days. Just make sure that you're fully considering the range of options you have. Now, we're going to talk about this and so much more on Office Hours this week. Our senior producer, Sarah Storm, will join me and we will go live. You can find a link in our show notes, or you can go to the LinkedIn news page at 3 p.m. Eastern on Wednesday afternoon. And if this episode meant something to you, think about sharing it or leave us a review. I haven't talked about reviews in a while, but they can be so helpful for us. Anywhere you listen to podcasts is a great place. I'm Jessi Hempel. Thank you so much for joining us in the studio this week. We will be right back here next Monday with a fresh conversation.